This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome to our viewers all around the world and in the United States this hour. It's just past 6 a.m. in Lviv, Ukraine. I'm Hala Garani. The capital city, Kyiv, is now under a 35-hour curfew as CNN's team on the ground has heard air raid sirens and a lot of explosions overnight. Many of those Russian attacks on Kyiv and its suburbs hit homes and apartment buildings, killing a number of civilians. 4 people died in the shelling of a western neighborhood in Kyiv. And amid the fighting, the prime ministers, and this is quite a bold move, the prime ministers of Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovenia went all the way to Kyiv to meet with the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, in the middle of this war. The Czech leader says the main purpose was to tell Ukraine it's not alone in its fight with Russia. And this is video from Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, in the east. Local officials report 65 instances of shelling on Monday alone, with 600 residential buildings destroyed since the invasion began. Civilian evacuations were interrupted on Monday by the renewed attacks. Kharkiv's mayor says 50 schools, plus medical facilities and hospitals, have all been attacked.
Unfortunately, shelling is continuous, both in the center part of Kharkiv and in suburbs. It just continues, incessant shelling and firing, and it seems like it has actually increased towards the evening. And we've had more airstrikes, and it seems like more of them actually hitting at residential blocks and buildings, infrastructure of the city. So basically the situation is dire.
Well, the situation is dire also in Mariupol, the southeastern port city. People there also desperate for help. A local official says Russian troops are holding doctors and patients against their will at a hospital.
The situation is catastrophic. I speak with my friend who today is lucky to go out from Mariupol, and it's terrible because Russians terrorists, not military, they are terrorists, taken as hostages not only people in hospital, they take hostages all 300,000 people of Mariupol for about 10 days.
Well, farther west, satellite images show at least 3 Russian helicopters destroyed by Ukrainian forces at the airport in Kherson. Several military vehicles were also hit. People in Mykolaiv are desperate to escape as Russian forces close in. The port city in southern Ukraine is a critical route on Russia's advance toward Odessa. And now fears are growing that a ground assault on Mykolaiv could come at any time. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh has our story.
This is the road down which Russia's war of annihilation may lurch. And its emptiness speaks only of what is to come, from Russian-held Kherson up here to the vital port of Mykolaiv. They know what it is to be in Russia's way. Out of 18 homes, 10 are left in our village, she says. No electricity, gas, water or heat. The only ones left are those who can't leave, another adds. They're young, edgy, guns raised, unsure who we are. Press written on our vests and our press cards slowly calms them down and they apologise. But this is not an army in full control of its destiny. The trenches are where the rockets land every night. Some are from Odessa, Moscow's eventual target here. Others from just down the road. You're saying his house is just over there? It's important to see what tools Ukraine has been left with by a world that seems so concerned. They fight for their homes, but tell me they captured Russians who seemed unaware why they were even here. They said they can't understand what's going on. He said they can't go back because back there they're being shot for retreating, so they advance or surrender. Dust in Mykolaiv has sounded this way for weeks. But unbroken morale takes different forms. And this is a police chief driving a birthday gift to the governor with a captured Russian machine gun soldered onto it. It does not distract from the seriousness of the twilight world in which his colleagues work. Any drunk or man changing his car battery after curfew could be a Russian saboteur, they fear. There really is no way to check bar looking at phones and in trunks. The city is dark, bar their lights and the flash of the distant enemy's bombs. An urgent hospital call for blood has gone out. They rush to help. The savagery of Russia's targeting measurable in how dark this 4-floor hospital keeps itself at night. Invisible, not from a power cut, but to avoid Russian bombs. Mykolaiv has been fearing encirclement for days. There is heartbreak for those who leave. Amid the shared agony, still a tussle to get on to buses to Moldova. The men stay.
Yes, this is my wife, Ksenia, and my daughter, Varvara.
And she goes to Poland.
She go to Poland because after come back. Of course, after come back.
And what will you do?
I go to the. This is my country. This is my country. What I must do? Go to the Poland? No Poland. This is my home.
Стойте, пожалуйста.
And there is heartbreak for those who stay. Svetlana lost her husband in a rocket attack Sunday that killed 9 outside a shop. The violence here is a chain of moments of blinding grief.
И тут мгновение, ракета. И мужа моего просто разорвало. Он захлебнулся кровью. Он в крови, в луже крови лежит до сих пор там еще. Он лежит там. А меня забрали. И осколки.
Pieces left
Ракету кинули.
to wander alone. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, Mykolaiv, Ukraine.
Such powerful reporting. Robert English is the Director of Central European Studies at the University of Southern California. He joins me now from Los Angeles. What's your assessment now of the battlefield advances of Russian troops? On the ground, they're not advancing. They're using other methods now.
They're losing. They are losing this war. They can steadily grind forward, but they can't really take territory. They can't conquer. All they can do is terrorize and destroy civilian targets, civilian homes and hospitals. They're losing this war.
So what happens next? I mean, when you say they're losing, they're obviously still present in the country, still shelling, still using missiles and airstrikes. They are killing civilians, as you said. They are terrorizing civilian areas. Where do we go from here?
I think we stay the course. I'm going to get personal now and say what I think. But again, the Ukrainians with Western support are winning, right? Putin doesn't see yet in his delusion that he's now experiencing what we could say is diminishing returns, right? For every bullet that they're firing at Ukrainian defenders, 100 bullets are going to come back at any Russians who attempt to occupy and impose a puppet government, right? For every additional dollar they waste on this fantasy, $100 of vital foreign investment will never return to help the Russian economy. And for every protester, for every Russian protester that Putin arrests at home, 1,000 young scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs will leave the country and never return and hollow it out. Putin is dooming his country to a generation of second or third rate status. That's what I mean when I say he's losing, even if they grind forward and continue to kill.
But the problem is, you said it yourself, and in fact, people who know him, who've spoken to him, would agree with you that he's perhaps not completely grasping the reality of the situation on the ground and how on the back foot his troops are in some parts of Ukraine in the way that you describe. But a delusional person does not follow logical thinking in the way that you might or that others might when they assess the situation cold-headedly. Could he use the most extreme type of weaponry? I mean, could he start leveling parts of cities like he helped Assad do in Syria?
He could, and he could also reach for the nuclear weapon, a small nuclear weapon to destroy a Ukrainian city, a larger nuclear weapon to threaten NATO. That's why we are desperate not to provoke him in this, state of delusion and probably confusion as he tries to come to terms, as his military, his intelligence, his political advisors try to sum up the courage to tell him it's not working. We are losing. We have to change course. We have to sign a ceasefire. We have to pull back. We have to find some way to declare victory and go home, because if they just confront him, perhaps that it's doomed, then maybe he will reach for the ultimate weapon. We're winning, but we haven't won because he still has weapons of mass destruction.
Sure. I spoke with the mayor of Lviv yesterday, where I am in western Ukraine, and we were able to film him talking with the mayor of Mykolaiv, which is encircled by Russian troops and getting hit very, very badly by artillery barrages and shelling. And the mayor basically told him, we're able to counterattack in some limited cases. So it's not just that we're defending, we're able to push back. To what do you attribute this Ukrainian ability, despite the fact that their military is so much smaller than the Russians?
They're defending their homeland. They're defending their wives, mothers, their homes and schools from a foreign invader. Putin might have thought that his army would fight that way because Russians have a reputation as fierce fighters in defense of what's theirs. But the Russians there now are demoralized, dispirited. They don't believe in what they're doing. And the Ukrainians have that power of dedication and defense of what's theirs that makes them supermen on the battlefield.
And I have to say, I was I've covered other conflict zones, and I was very impressed with how organized suddenly everybody was, not just militarily, but in terms of organizing refugee flows. I mean, you're in a city like Lviv that has taken 200,000 internally displaced Ukrainians. You wouldn't really you wouldn't know unless someone told you that a city the size of Lviv has absorbed 200,000 people. There is tremendous organization and discipline. For instance, alcohol sales are banned throughout the country, so people stay sharp and continue fighting. I wonder, I mean, this war is not even 3 weeks old, and this country has organized itself with such discipline. Why do you think that is?
I think it's the same thing. They are acting on the battlefield, in logistics, in organizing civilians, in everything you just described. They're acting with grim determination and sober dedication. The Russians, they're drunk. Putin is drunk with power, and I think half of the soldiers are probably drunk with something else to try to dull the pain, again, of what they know is doomed. It's amazing what societies can do when it's a matter of life and death. And boy, did Putin underestimate the Ukrainians.
Robert English, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Well, President Zelensky is just hours away from delivering a wartime speech to the U.S. Congress. He's expected to reiterate his call for a no-fly zone and fighter jets, requests the U.S. and NATO have so far resisted, the no-fly zone in particular. Mr. Zelensky called NATO's principle of collective defense weak on Tuesday, and he suggested he doesn't expect NATO membership soon, which is interesting Interesting thing for him to say publicly. Ukraine never joining NATO was a repeated demand by Russia in the run-up to this invasion.
For years, we have been hearing about how the door is supposedly open to NATO membership, but now we hear that we cannot enter that door. And it is true, and it must be acknowledged. I am glad that our people are beginning to understand this and rely on themselves and on our partners who assist us.
Well, after Mr. Zelensky's speech to Congress, the U.S. president is expected to announce another round of assistance to Ukraine. This comes as Joe Biden plans a trip to Europe next week to attend a meeting of NATO leaders and the European Council. Caitlin Collins has details from the diplomatic front.
Yeah, President Zelensky and President Biden both expected to give major speeches on Wednesday. First, Ukrainian President Zelensky is going to address the United States Congress, where we know he's going to thank the United States for the support that they've given to Ukraine since Russia invaded. But he's also expected to ask the West for more assistance. And two of his major demands have been to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine and also to send the Ukrainian Air Force more fighter jets. Two things that have been firm no's from the White House so far, citing conflicts that they believe that could draw the United States into, and of course the high-risk situation of transferring planes into Ukraine as Russia is attacking it. Of course, Zelensky could ask for other assistance in this speech that he is going to give to Congress, and we will hear from President Biden later on, where he is going to announce $800 million in new assistance to Ukraine. That would bring the total in the last week to about $1 billion in new lethal assistance that the United States has provided to Ukraine. Obviously, they will try to get that in as quickly as possible. We'll still wait for specifics from President Biden on what that's going to look like, whether or not it includes those armed drones that Zelensky and other Ukrainian officials have talked about that they need at this time. And of course, both of these speeches come as the White House says President Biden is preparing to travel to Brussels for an extraordinary meeting with the leaders of NATO next Thursday on March 24th. That's going to happen before a European Council meeting as well, and potentially a trip to Poland, where of course President Biden could come face to face with some of the millions of refugees who have fled Ukraine. Caitlin Collins, CNN, the White House.
Our coverage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues in just a moment. Coming up, while tens of thousands of people flee Ukraine each day in search of safety, we meet some women who are returning back into the war zone.
If you know what you need to do, it's impossible to feel nervous or something like this. If I have to do this, I will do it. For my country, for my relatives, for my friends. That's right.
The UN says that more than 3 million people now have fled the violence in Ukraine since the invasion started nearly 3 weeks ago. Poland has taken in the most refugees by far, almost 2 million as of Tuesday. This map shows the other neighboring countries where Ukrainians are fleeing. As we've reported, the majority of people leaving are women and those who are vulnerable, like children and the elderly. Even as the refugee numbers continue to grow, CNN has found some women are now heading back to Ukraine to lend their support in the fight. CNN's Ed Lavandera reports.
The rail line from Ukraine ends at Platform 5 at the train station in Przemysl, Poland. After refugees walk off, this same train will go back. For weeks, it's mostly been men returning to join the Ukrainian fight against Russia. But in front of the sign reading Train for Ukraine, women are waiting hours for a ride back into the war zone. Near the front of the line, we found Tatiana Veremchenko. She came to Poland 3 days ago to bring her 2 adult daughters to safety. Now the 40-year-old is going home to a town in eastern Ukraine near the Russian border. Ukraine is equally important for men and women, she says. We're the real Ukrainians. Women have the strength and will and the heart as well. By our count, women accounted for about half of the passengers in this line waiting to cross the border back to Ukraine. Irina Orel brought her grandchildren to Poland. She's returning now to be with her family in Odessa.
How worried are you about your safety?
I'm anxious, she says, but the feeling has become dull over time. I just want to be next to my family. Do you feel like this is a way of fighting for your country? Of course, she says, we have all become united during this time, each one doing what they can to help our military. Women are doing it, and men as well. Standing with several women, we met Maria Halligan. She's going to Kiev to be with her husband and family to fight, in her words, Russian terrorists.
If you know what you need to do, it's impossible to feel nervous or something like this. If I have to do this, I will do it. For my country, for my relatives, for my friends.
And what stands out to me in this line of people going back to Ukraine is that there are so many women. Why do you think that is?
I'm not man. I can't kill. I'm woman, and my work keep balance and help and be kind and care about relatives, family, friends, and all we can. But now I feel that all Ukrainians, my relatives.
Before she leaves, Maria shows us a heart-shaped Ukrainian flag given to her by Polish children to protect her. Those returning walk past a carriage that reads, "Safety above all," but the train leaving Platform 5 disappears into a war zone where safety is a dream. Ed Lavandera, CNN, Przemysl, Poland.
Well, if you'd like to help people in Ukraine who may be in need of shelter, food, and water, we've curated a list of organizations assisting refugees and others. Go to cnn.com/impact and you'll find several ways you can help. Millions of dollars have been raised already. Still ahead, as explosions ring out in Kyiv, several European leaders travel to Ukraine's capital to meet with the president. Hear their message for other members of the EU after the break. Plus, my interview with the mayor here in Lviv, why he's unbowed after Sunday's deadly attack on a nearby military base. You told me earlier that this will end in victory for the Ukrainian.
I believe in our victory 100%.